Road and gone down towards Rebecca's Road. So I do want to go there. The main point of the afternoon was actually to come here, and just a little bit further up ahead from us is a spot where I last left, or I left the generals. Oh, yeah. Afternoon everyone, and I'm going to start all over from the beginning. Welcome to our sunset drive this afternoon. Oh, there's an very fresh elephant track. He's just crossed the road and he's gone that way. Welcome to our drive this afternoon. My name is Mark. I have VM on camera with me this afternoon. Monday afternoon here in the bush. It's a lovely afternoon. Quite warm. Temperature's probably in the low 20s, around about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. No, 70s, high 70s, nearly 80. Not much of a breeze blowing at all. Now this is where I last had leopard tracks this morning, and I suppose I was a little bit vain in thinking that I'm going to come back here and I'm going to either find tracks or I'm going to find a leopard. And while it's not an impossibility, I think it was being a little bit too optimistic. It's still quite warm. I don't think a leopard's going to be moving about in this. But at least what I'm doing is I'm laying down tire tracks that are going to give me a time frame. Because I know I was here at this time, and it'll help me when I come back. If we come back here a little bit later, and he does come out, we'll be able to see if his tracks are on top of these tire tracks. I know that I was on that road this morning, so I'll be able to get a time frame, and I know that there were no tracks on that road this morning. I'll be able to get a time frame of when he was moving about, because I think I've kind of covered 3 roads now that if he was to wake up and start walking, he's bound to cross at least one of them, and now this is going to be the 4th. As we go onto a big road that's an entrance road into the reserve. It comes from the gate and heads south, servicing almost every other lodge in the northern part of the Sabi Sands. So it's quite a main road. It doesn't mean that it's not utilized by animals. In fact, the elephant track that I've just seen crossing up there, I'm hoping to find crossing over here. And if he crosses over into Arathusa, we're going to follow his tracks over into Arathusa. And that kind of fits in with my plan this afternoon, because I wanted to go over to Arathusa and have a look. There's a lovely big herd of elephants, and sadly last night, while sitting with them for the sunset, we were a little bit short on time and we had to leave them. And well, you don't know elephants until you've sat with them for a while and watched almost everything that they do. So I'd like to find them. I'd like to sit and watch all the different pages if we can find them. And well, and one of these young bulls that are walking around might just help. Some elephant tracks here, but they are covered in tire tracks. Over into Djuma, but they are not fresh. Being a Monday, I would expect that there are a lot of vehicles that have traveled this road today, either transfers of guests going out of the reserve or guests coming into the reserve, but also deliveries, contract workers, people who are coming in to either build or fix. This is a fairly main road. It's almost like the equivalent of the main road that I have to travel when I go home into the Timbavati, except it's a better surfaced road. And while that might sound good, unfortunately it means that people think that they can speed. It's just a really bad thing. People don't really think when they're driving in wild areas. But fortunately this road is still quite narrow. It keeps the speed down and animals are quite safe. So far, not really seeing anything from this big elephant that was supposedly walking south over Impala Plains. Well, not a very big elephant, but he was a an adult bull. Oh, Scott's already at Arathusa Dam. Good. Then I can concentrate on these elephants. We're going to have a link to Scott. And I'll talk to you a little later.
Well, welcome back everyone. And as you can see, we are sitting in a beautiful, beautiful setting here at Treehouse Dam. We are currently sitting in the shade of the tree that the old treehouse used to be built in, and it's a beautiful marula tree that Brian is showing you now. And these are the animals whose hooves and dung we saw on the road heading in this direction. So we could safely guess that they were going to be here. So to those of you who said that the Cape buffalo was the animal responsible for delivering that parcel onto the middle of the road, you were correct. So very well done. I'm in an area with very bad radio comms at the moment, so I'm battling to copy anybody's names who did get the correct answer. But well done to you all. Now, while we have this shot, I'm going to take my time to again apologize to Sharon in Austria for the misinformation that I shared with all of you. So it's an apology to all of you, but thank you to Sharon for correcting me. Sharon asked the other day whether horned borer moths would affect the living animals, and for those of you who don't know, horned borer moths are little animals that can feed on the keratin sheath that makes up the external parts of the animal's horns. And I was always under the impression that they could only feed on the keratin of animals that have died, because I assumed that the living animals would be able to keep moving and keep brushing these small larvae off their horns, but that's actually not the case. And if you look closely on the horns of this buffalo, you'll see small ridges where the larvae have fed on the keratin. Another reason why I didn't think that they occurred on living animals, and this didn't make any sense on my behalf, was that on the skeletons of dead animals, on the horns, you will see small excrement casings that almost look like short dreadlocks growing out of the horns, it appears, and those excrement cases are rubbed off by the living animals, so you don't ever get to see them, even though there are these tiny insects feeding on their horn sheath. So thanks very much, Sharon, for correcting me on that, and apologies to all of you for the misinformation. It's not only the buffalo's horns that they feed on, they also feed on other antelope's horns, impala, kudu, and that's the reason why the buffalo and other antelope will brush their heads into the bushes. It's not just to polish up their horns and keep the tips sharp, but it's to try and keep those insects at bay. Fortunately, there are other animals that they need to keep at bay, called ticks, but thankfully they've got oxpeckers, the birds that you can see digging in this individual's ears, for little blood-sucking parasites. So it's a wonderful service that these birds provide to the buffalo and other antelope in this area. The cats aren't lucky enough to have this service, and I think the birds have realized that it would be a very dangerous place to try and have a meal, in and around a cat's mouth. So the lion and leopard have to do it themselves. Now, the behavior of these buffalo bulls, they're all bulls. There's no females present, and it's like an old boys club here, just relaxing, chewing the cud. They tend to spend the majority of their evenings out grazing at this time of the year, and their days resting around dams. It's not hugely different in summer. And here's one who's in the zone, chewing the cud. They'll also technically be kind of in a state of sleep when they are chewing the cud. Animals very seldom have the opportunity to switch off like humans do, although I may have just seen a buffalo that looks like it's in a coma. Now Brian will take you across to it, and you'll see an abnormal view of a buffalo sleeping with not a worry in the world. Look at that. Right on. There's two of them actually, one closest to us and then one on the far bank. Both fast asleep, but even the ones that are chewing the cud will be catching up on some time to relax and sleep, you could say. There's 3 birds now on the frame, all different. A black-smith lapwing in the front, a red-billed oxpecker, but it looks like a juvenile. Oh no, there's an adult and a juvenile there. The adult's got the bright red beak, the juvenile's beaks are still brown, and then way in the background next to the apparently dead buffalo, oh, there's an ear wagging. He can obviously hear us and he's signaling that he's okay. But that's a Burchell starling. There hasn't been too many other signs of life here. I saw a squirrel run across the dam wall a few minutes ago, but other than that, it's all calm and peaceful here. So we are going to continue on towards the next dam, which is called Twin Dams, and see if there's any more luck there. What a beautiful setting this is though. And we thought we'd show you a different view. We usually drive across the dam wall. There's a road that takes you across the dam wall that Brian's just going to show you exactly where the road starts and then moves across to the right. It's actually a very narrow dam wall, so it's quite scary driving along there, especially after it's been rainy. But that's usually where we show you this dam from, that angle. So I hope you enjoyed the view from the opposite end of the dam that you're used to seeing. And now I'm hoping as I move from this area the radio comms with the final control improve, because it is critical for me. Oh, sorry old boy. It is critical that we are in contact with one another. These starlings really are beautiful, especially when they are glistening in the sunlight. This was the same starling. Oh, it just gobbled something up, a little insect it looks like. And this is the same starling we saw from a distance. It's called the Burchell starling. They've got these incredible feathers that iridesce in the sunlight. You may hear a strange sound in the background. That's a male impala rutting, and I wonder if he's not going to come running past here. We saw some interesting rutting display on the Sunrise Drive, and we were very close to seeing some impala actually mating. It's something that I've seen very rarely, and for a moment thought we were going to really get lucky and see it live on cam. Radio test. for those of you who were on the AM drive, I showed you the seed pod from, excuse me, a silver cluster leaf, and I'm just going to point out a few silver cluster leaves as we drive along here. They have a very distinctive silvery leaf, and here's another one. There's no other tree quite like it here, and it's got a two-winged seed pod designed for flotation, and doesn't look like any of these have got seed pods on them, otherwise I would pluck one for you to show all of you who were not on the AM safari. But this is a silver cluster leaf, and one of the prominent trees in this area. If there were no elephants here, they would grow into beautiful big trees, but the elephants keep them trimmed down, and you can even see that the two vertical stems that are growing out of what would have been a much bigger tree but got pushed over by elephants, and a few of the surviving branches managed to keep it going. It's quite common to see this in a lot of trees here that are pushed over by elephants but continue to survive. Folks, we're still a few minutes away from Twin Dams, so let's see what Mark's up to, and we will let you know what we find a little bit later on.
Hello everyone. Now, just recently Scott showed me a picture of this. This is something that he had found on drive coming down to the hyena den the other day. So I'm just taking all the equipment off that I can speak to you properly without all the wires hanging from my face. And Scott showed me this, and it was quite intriguing because if you remember a few days ago, for those of you who are new, I hope you can find, or somebody can post a picture of this, but there was a caterpillar on top of this cocoon. Now, Scott was quite curious, and I was intrigued because it's quite a remarkable thing, actually. And I really was looking forward to coming to find it, because while it's one thing to look at it on a screen cap or a picture, I think it was actually a screen cap. While it's one thing to look at it from a screen cap, it's another thing to actually come here and see it in person so that I can comment on it in person, and something I'm going to be doing shortly.
Good afternoon, Morehouse Station.
I'm sorry, that, oops. That
Good afternoon, Hawks. No updates yet. Mark's going to be taking up towards Sandy Patch. And I'm taking 3 hours down to up to Buffalo.
Yes, sorry. Excuse the radio, but I don't want to talk over it. That's just one of those things that we have to live with. So I was curious. I was curious as to whether this was one cocoon or whether it was many. And normally when you find many cocoons that come out of a caterpillar, they're actually on the back of the caterpillar. And this seemed to have been something underneath the caterpillar. And what I think this is a parasitic wasp. that must have laid its egg inside the caterpillar. The wasp actually stings the caterpillar. Well, she doesn't inject any venom. It's not like some of the wasps that actually catch caterpillars and they... Excuse me, now I've got to switch Goodbye. Okay, so where was I? I'd like to try and explain this better without the interruptions. But anyways, some wasps will actually sting a caterpillar. There's some the potter wasps and the masonry wasps. They go for the looper caterpillars or the inchworms, I think they're called in North America. And they'll sting them and they'll immobilize them and they'll actually take them to their nests, pre-made nests where they've either made a chamber out of clay or a beautiful little clay pot, and they'll stuff them into that pot with an egg, and the larva of the wasp will eventually hatch and eat the immobilized caterpillar. The caterpillar is never killed because it would dry out very quickly if it was dead. It is merely sort of put into a coma or anesthetized. It's almost like a neurotoxin that it just renders the animal completely immobile, but it's still breathing, it's still living. And you'll get wasps that do that to caterpillars and grasshoppers and praying mantises and spiders and all sorts of things. But this wasp is a bit lazy. She doesn't even do that. She just puts her egg directly into the caterpillar. The caterpillar barely feels. It's like an injection, really. And then the wasp's larva will actually eat the insides of that caterpillar. It will eat, while the caterpillar is chewing on leaves, the wasp larva will actually be eating everything that the caterpillar is consuming. And eventually, when it comes time for the caterpillar to go into the pupal state, to become a moth or a butterfly for whatever it is going to become, and it's supposed to spin its own cocoon, somehow the parasite within its body alters the brain waves. It alters the brain function so that instead of spinning an entire cocoon, sometimes the caterpillar will just spin a little bed of silk and it will stay there, so that the wasp larva will eventually emerge from the caterpillar and spin its own cocoon. And that would have been the caterpillar sitting on top of this cocoon, immobilized because almost its entire insides had been taken out. It would have still appeared alive because it would have still been breathing, but there would have been nothing left inside it other than the wasp larva, which would have emerged and spun its own cocoon. And I think if we leave it here, I think in one of these days we can actually come by here and we'll see that it has emerged. We might even find a pupal case, but for now it's still going through its own metamorphosis from being a larva to becoming an adult wasp. If there were many cocoons, it would be a super parasitic wasp, but I'll leave that for another time because I might be sort of going on a little bit too much about wasps right now. But we're on the road down to the hyena den, and I've been looking for a leopard and for elephants, and I thought, well, while we're here, we'll go down to the hyena den anyway. Look what I found on the ground. I was looking for the caterpillar skeleton when we joined up with you.
A bit close.
A bit too close. Oh, I dropped it. Okay, here's the quiz. The first quiz of today. What is... That's not going to work. I'll put it on the dashboard. I think I've got 3 questions to ask the viewers this afternoon while we head down to the hyena den, and I don't know how long it'll take, but the first question is, what do you think that is from? Second question will come after the first question. And then the third question will come after the second, because I can't ask them without that order. Answers to questions at WildEarthTV, or you can send a tweet, #SafariLive. If you're going to send an email, just put in the subject line so that we don't get a big email that we have to read. This is just a quickie. And of course, first couple of answers, and then we'll move on to the next question. going to be going to Arathusa, and I've had to change plans a little bit because of radio communications this afternoon. So for now, we're just going to try and find the elephants that were here. And now I'm hoping that maybe hyena cubs have woken up and they might be lying out in the shade, because it might be a little bit too hot and stuffy in the burrow, and with a bit of luck they might be out, but it might still be a little early. If it is, we'll just have to come by a little later. Hello? Anybody home? Nobody. Once upon a time there was actually an entrance on this side of the den, but it seems to be closed up completely. It was amongst all of those bushes over there. That was a few years ago, but it doesn't look like anybody's home today, or if they are, they're not coming out to play. So we're going to go over to Scott, and we'll be back with you shortly when I can find you something, maybe big and great.
The radios got mixed up there. Welcome back, everyone.
Afternoon, Rob. How are you?
And I'm so happy you got to hear Mark informing you on that really interesting sighting that I actually saw a few days ago, but I didn't know what Mark knew, and isn't it really fascinating? So really happy that Mark did head over there and let you know about some crazy stuff that goes on out here. And I think a lot of the time we simply are unaware or don't focus on how incredible some of the smaller animals are simply because of their size. If you were to make those caterpillars ginormous and the wasps that parasitize them, imagine watching that whole event unfold. So great that Mark does have such great knowledge of the smaller things out here. We didn't see one single animal at Twin Dams, and that's how it goes. It's the luck of the draw. There's one animal that we can hear alarm calling up in the tree. It doesn't seem to be alarm calling too aggressively. But if it had have seen whatever the predator is that's annoying it a long time ago, it may be tired of calling. I wonder what it's seen. It's very thick in there. It could be just about anything, a snake or a mongoose, even a leopard. But as Brian's showing you, it's looking into a very thick cluster of trees that grow along the edge of a riverbed. I'm tempted to just roll back and see if we can try and get a few different angles into this thick bush. Who knows what could be in there. So often following up on alarm calls, you come up with nothing, but when you do eventually spot something interesting, be it a snake or a leopard or a bird of prey, it really is awesome. Well, not looking very promising here, but at least we stopped and had a quick scout. Just got a question through from Sue. Good afternoon and welcome on board with us. Sue is interested to know the likelihood of a crocodile attacking a sleeping Cape buffalo. I'm sure it has happened, but you would need really, really massive crocodiles to be able to prey on the Cape buffaloes when they're big bulls. It's a huge, huge animal. Can weigh up to around 800 kilograms, about 1,700 pounds, I guess that is, roughly. There are crocodiles big enough to do it, but I've never personally seen that. What I have seen, though, is crocodiles, and again fairly large ones, catching smaller buffaloes, the calves and the medium-sized animals, and even the cows out of waterholes as well as rivers. So they certainly can do it, but it's not something that happens commonly, at least not here. We don't have a very big crocodile population here, whereas in other areas crocodile populations are large, and not only are the populations large, but sometimes the actual animals themselves can be in excess of 20 feet. And in the last 6 months we've probably had, it was either two different crocodiles or the same one, but we've had crocodile viewing for about 3 weeks out of 6 months. So that gives you an idea of how many we've been seeing up here on Djuma. One of the best places for crocodile viewing that I've ever been to or experienced is in the Masai Mara in Kenya, and there are some huge crocodiles that live in the rivers there, and when the wildebeest and zebra migrate, they have to cross these rivers, and it's absolute chaos. These crocodiles literally have thousands of animals to choose from, and often kill so many of them that they can't actually feed on all of them. It's a time of plenty for the crocodiles, I guess, and they certainly do make the most of it, and it makes for some incredible game viewing. In Toronto, good afternoon and welcome. Brian is interested to know why we don't see many Cape glossy starlings here. We only see the greater blue-eared, really, and they look very similar, but they are different. Whereas in other parts of the Kruger National Park, they're abundant. It's simply got to do with habitat. Brian is interested to know why we don't see many Cape glossy starlings here. We only see the greater blue-eared, really, and they look very similar, but they are different. Whereas in other parts of the Kruger National Park, they're abundant. So potentially competition because they are simply got to do with habitat and size. They may compete aggressively with one another. And maybe it's simply but it's certainly worth us heading into the area, and we might hear other alarm calls. We might find the tracks of a leopard, hopefully, and it is certainly an area where leopard often move through. Another Burchell starling. You'll notice though when the sunlight is not ideal, the feathers do not iridesce in the same light as they do when the sun is behind us. So they look like almost different birds depending on what light they have on them. Thing actually in the first place, that wouldn't be a first. The power of the mind is actually incredible out here, and when you're really desperate to see something or hear something, your brain twists and minutes while we stop and listen and try and pick up some monkey's alarm.
A little bit of teak and a few other things in between, but it's predominantly that. And elephants at this time of the year are actually eating the roots and drinking them into the block of bushveld that I'm still trying to find. So I've been driving up and down slow just to see if I can see them or hear something, and sadly not just yet. But we're going to get back to this. Unfortunately it is broken now, but I'll put it back together because I asked you all the question. This is the wonderful thing about doing live drives, is that it's nothing like watching TV. It's nothing like just watching a program and having to accept whatever you're being told. Being interactive the way we are, spider, a crab claw, a tooth, a beak, a crayfish. Few guesses what this was, and I'll get back to what I was saying. Few guesses that came in, some interesting answers, and actually it's a very difficult question. There are only two possible answers. Those that got it right are Arlene, Sam, Bonnie, Nigel, missed the first one, Stephanie, Janice, but there was a name, the first name I forgot. Yes, you all got it right. Nigel was the first. Scorpion, the burrowing scorpion. And why it differs from a crab, well, I couldn't really tell you, because I'm sure I could find a crab claw that looks very, very similar. We don't have crayfish or crawfish or any of those other freshwater crustaceans. The only freshwater crustaceans that we have are fairy shrimp, which don't have claws because they're only about an eighth of an inch long, maybe a quarter of an inch, and freshwater crabs and wood lice. That's the only crustaceans that we have here. We're actually not very far, maybe a few yards away from a freshwater crab hole that I've been watching the whole of summer. We'll stop there and have a look. But well done for those of you who got it right. To distinguish between a crab claw and a scorpion claw, it's very, very difficult considering that there's such a variety of both. And it's really an interesting example of how there are parallel paths of adaptation, evolution or adaptation, in that although they are somewhat related, being arthropods, they are still quite different creatures and quite remarkable that something that is an aquatic, like a crab or a crayfish or a lobster, has developed claws much like that of a scorpion. The hole that we can see down there, that is actually in the hole. I mean, this is a little mud wallow, but that hole did have, once upon a time, when it was wet, a freshwater crab.
Yeah.
I had yeah, I've got this big one too. Just want to have a look down the hole, see if I can see anything. It's there.
Yeah.
Could you see that if I put the light?
Yeah, try again. Yeah, I can see it. Now you're in the way. Go a little bit to the left.
Me?
Yes. Yeah, there we go. Just a little bit more to the left.
It has to be, the problem is that the light has to be almost exactly where the camera is. Because but is that the crab there?
Yes.
There it is. And that poor child is going to have to stay there till the rains come again. And that might only be in November or December. Because he's got a long walk to Gari Dam. And it's not going to do that. But if only I could coax it out and it could come and show you its claw. I could show you the difference. But that's not going to happen. Not on a hot, wintry afternoon. A crab tucked in this burrow. There's some birds alarming. I think there might be an owl or something in one of these jackalberries. I think we should investigate. That is affecting my radio. That looks better. I'm looking at a very big jackalberry in the distance, and there are a lot of birds that are complaining. If I stop, we can listen. Maybe you'll hear them too. That's normally a noise that birds will make, small birds. It's like they're complaining, they're protesting, and that's not a ground predator. That's something that's in the tree, perhaps. I think something that could be a snake, or it could be an owl. Unfortunately, they've stopped alarming now. But just going to look through the tree. It requires close scrutiny, because if there is something there, it's normally going to be camouflaged or sitting in a really deep hollow, or even concealed. unfortunately the birds have stopped alarming, and normally it helps because they point at the predator. They can give you a very good idea where a predator is. But now I'm just looking at a big tree and there could be anything in there and it would take me hours to find it. So I think we'll continue. Some creepers growing up there that are part of, you can see them hanging almost like a liana, those hanging creepers. It's a plant known as caparissa, and it is a caper bush, and it is the family of the capers that we eat, or the capers that are harvested and commercially used. I don't think it's a large predator. There's an impala ram standing not far away, but it is typical of the way young, or rather small birds, very small birds, those were chin-spot battuses that were complaining. Small birds who are quite territorial. When they have a predator like a snake or an owl in their territory, they get very agitated. It's not a harsh alarm like maybe the go-away bird or one of those birds that have a very harsh call. It's just a constant twittering, constant twit, 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 twit. Sometimes you find something and sometimes you don't. I hope you're going to find something now. But you have to investigate anything that sends signals that there might be something there. I'm not finding any sign of these ellies that can't be too far away. But they're just hidden in that Combritum woodland. Nigel sent us a tweet asking about the impala rutting. He says that every night he hears on the cameras at the waterholes there's this constant rutting noise of the impala. Wanting to know if this is normal, and surely it makes them vulnerable to predators, and you're quite right. Well, first of all, it is normal for now, Nigel, for this time of the year. It is very intensive over the few weeks of this part of winter. It's when all of the females come into estrus together, so there's a relatively short period of time, maybe a month or so at the most, where most of them need to be impregnated, they need to be covered, and there is a dynamic that is involved in doing so. I think Scott was lucky enough this morning to actually see the whole mating thing going on with one of the herds of impala up on quarantine. And it is so energy consuming for the male who is in charge of a herd that there's a constant turnover of males, and that's one of the ways that nature ensures that there's not just one male that impregnates a whole herd of females, because he can't keep it up for very long, and after a week or two he loses condition and he actually gets ousted by one of the other males that has risen through the ranks of a bachelor herd and is now ready to challenge anybody because he's the king of the hill. And he's invariably stronger than the male who's been spending a week, 10 days, 2 weeks chasing off other males, mating with females, barely getting time to get a mouthful, and constantly having to keep his females in place. it's a never-ending physical cycle that saps their energy. So he's easily ousted, and the new male comes in. And because of that process being so intense, because there are so many males that also want access to the females at this time of the year, it's just, I have it all night at home in the Timbavati. It's just one of those things. It's far erotic season. Coming in from Wisconsin. Hello Roger, welcome on board our jigger this afternoon, and Wendy when you cross over. Roger is saying that someone, a friend of Roger's, has mentioned a tree in Africa called the Tree of Life, and can I elaborate? And I can't. I can't. Perhaps the Bay of Bab. And maybe that's something I can put out to the viewers out there. Do a Google search for me. Just let me know, somebody, one of you. Just Google Tree of Life, we'll see what they say. I'm thinking maybe it's a Bay of Bab. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, questions at WildEarthTV, hashtag Safari Live if it's a tweet. Are we waiting for that answer? We're going to go over to Scott. And I'm guessing you can all identify a bird that he's with. And I'll see you shortly. See you soon. Just now.
Welcome back everyone. And this is a bird we don't very commonly get to show you. And that's partly because of its lifestyle, and it spends a lot of time hopping around on the floor and in thick trees. But as it pops into a few clearings along the way, you'll notice it's got a bright orange coloured eye, and a lot of streaking along the chest. They are called arrow-marked babblers, and their call is a crazy babbling sound that actually alerted us to their presence now, and I'm hoping they're going to let off their call again. It's absolutely incredible how much noise they make, and they fly in small family flocks, and to maintain flock cohesion they babble off to one another. This one appears to be hunting. They feed on insects as well as fruits and seeds, so omnivorous. And I think I can hear another flock of babblers in the distance starting to call, and that may induce this flock that we're watching to call back to them. Although they've all disappeared out of our view, so we'll let it slide this time, but we'll try our best to show you these babblers. Oh, hold on, here they go. Okay, so some have just started calling behind us. Now I think this flock, just listen, you'll hear them calling. They're still warming up though, and I think they're going to build up into a crescendo shortly. So they've just flown up and landed in this knobthorn acacia. I wonder if they're going to call from here. So another flock nearby is calling, and they now have flown up to get a vantage point, I guess, to see where that flock could be. I actually seem to be flying towards it, but sadly their babbling performance was not the best. It's cooling down wonderfully this afternoon, and I think our timing to arrive at Buffelshoek Dam in about 15 or 20 minutes is hopefully going to coincide with Karula's timing to arrive there. I'm hoping that that's the case. She was very close to there this morning, and she had been heading in that general direction from a long way off, but in the last moment she veered off.
Negative, it's only myself.
This is a really awesome bird called a Burchell's cuckoo, and they're predatory birds. They often steal other little baby birds from nests, but also eat a host of insects and reptiles. And it flies from bush to bush searching for snacks, and we're lucky to have got a glimpse of it there. It may pop out again, so we'll wait a moment or two, but I'm not convinced. They are quite secretive and actually do incredibly well at scurrying through quite thick undergrowth. Despite being quite a large bird, they hop from branch to branch, and there it comes. I think it's popping out to the right. You can just see it faintly working its way through the grass, and this is how they find their food. Won't it just be awesome if its head pokes out that tuft of grass? That's disappeared into there and could at some stage pop out. What does it appear to be doing? It's hard to tell now. Initially we could see the grass moving ever so slightly, but now I fear it may have... Oh no, here it comes. Awesome! Jeez, look at this. Wow.
That was unexpected.
What? Yeah, that was the last thing that I expected, and I wonder why it rushed back here. Did it get a fright from something in that other clump of grass? Or was it chasing after an insect? I couldn't see anything flying in front of it. It all happened so quickly. But apparently the girls in final control, Tara who's directing and Nikki who's giving her a hand, is well, it sounds like you just got a short action replay there, and how awesome that we do now have technology to allow for a quick action replay to show you something interesting that if you had have blinked you would have missed it. I certainly didn't see anything. So thanks very much to Final Control for showing you all that, and I hope you enjoyed that. The cuckoo is still hunting, possibly looking for the same grasshopper in and amongst this thicket. Absolutely awesome. And one person that I should have also congratulated a lot earlier is Brian. Oh, look at this. Absolutely awesome. But Brian did an incredible job staying on that bird as it flew unexpectedly straight towards us out of that tuft of grass. Initially I just said, wouldn't it be nice if it poked its head out? Well, it poked its head out and more. High speed pursuit after a grasshopper, and now it continues to entertain us, and you get a good idea of how this bird likes to move, and it likes hopping from branch to branch, and this allows it to scurry through quite thick undergrowth where it searches for its food. That's why we typically don't get to see them very often. They're always in the thick of things, so to speak. They've got a blood red eye, which is characteristic, and very pretty markings on its feathers. Wow, thank you, Virtual's Kukul. That was an unexpected but awesome chase we just witnessed. So just to recap and let everyone know the plans this afternoon, we had an exciting morning out. There was 2 potential leopard sightings on the cards. Mark was following exceptionally fresh tracks of a young male, and Brian and I were standing by on one of our boundary roads as we had a report that a leopard had been found and she was moving towards us from a property that we couldn't drive on. And we actually saw the vehicle. They were so close to us, and then the leopard veered off into a different direction. So a little bit disappointing, but still good prospects, because both those leopards could, between now and there, we could bump into anything. We could bump into another leopard before we get there, or the leopard we're actually looking for. They can change their mind and perform interesting acts that we often don't predict or wouldn't assume they would perform these things. And that's what I love about being out here, because the element of surprise is potentially around every single corner. But there's a plan, and that is to find leopard. The Nkuhuma pride that we saw last night, they moved east and north onto Torchwood to the east of us, but did spend some time on our property before they crossed out. Mark followed their tracks from the central part of our property down to Twin Dams, and there they followed our southern boundary until they crossed east out of our property. But they could be back sometime tonight, and tomorrow morning we could find them again. Or they could surprise us and have moved during the day, although that is unlikely in terms of their current behavior that we've been experiencing with them. We're about to go through a bit of a little low signal area, so it's a good opportunity to cross over to Mark, and we will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome back to our sunset drive, this part of Djuma. We've decided to come into the riverbed. I'm actually here because I want to look for a flower, and it's a really beautiful flower that only flowers in the dry season. You might be able to find, and it's a flower that is really, really pretty. It's coral color, and I just feel that it's overdue to present a flower to the ladies out there. I'm hoping signal will be fine down here in the riverbed. I think it should be. But I'm also hoping that maybe there's an elephant or two. I mean, this is the coolest part of the reserve at the moment. Down here, this is the Mulwati River. It's the riverbed that feeds Gowrie Dam. And only once it flows, oh no, not only. But once Gowrie Dam fills up and overflows, then we get to have this flowing. But there are a lot of side drainage lines that also flow into it, they contribute to the water. Now, there was a butterfly here a minute ago. There's one flitting around, but this, I can see it, it's gone further back into the Tambuti thicket. There's one that you can see flitting around, that's the orange-tipped calotus. It's almost impossible to follow it. Although there, it's actually stopped now. On that pathway going up there, the shadow passed over it and it flew off. Wait for it to settle again. Did you see where it settled? And it's gone again. Now you can't see it because the underwing is camouflaged, but that was a dry season morph of the orange-tipped calotus, but it's not quite the butterfly. There was another one that I wanted to show you. It's not even moving now. Thanks. Flew deeper in. It was called the pearl caraxi. One of the largest and one of the most beautiful butterflies that we have. Almost as good as if not better than a flower. The flower that I want to look for is just a little bit further on. Carrie, sorry, we're going to bend the antenna a little bit. There we go. Carrie in Illinois. So good to hear from you, Carrie. Was giving me an answer about the tree of life, because I asked a question earlier about the tree of life. I didn't quite get that, so I'm sure that Final Control will give me the name of that tree again here. But Carrie, one of the West African moringa. Thanks, Carrie. Well, I'm not really familiar with West African folklore and West African trees even. I'll have to look it up, the West African moringa. And I guess there's obviously a reason why it's called the tree of life. But Carrie says she's also got a special place in her heart for the baobabs, and the tree of life can be any tree that you want it to be, really. It can be any tree that is special to you. This is a hibiscus that's closed its flowers for the night. We'd have to come down here in the morning to see them open. One of the wild hibiscus, Mallow family. The Malvasia. Not the flower I came looking for, but I'm also looking for animals, birds and reptiles and insects and spiders and anything I can find for you. We've got to dodge holes in the sand where elephants are for water, but the water table is dropping, so some of these holes are getting quite deep because they're still not getting back to the water table. Okay, We're going to head over to Scotland now. I'm going to find flowers, or I'm going to see if I can find some signs of elephant. I'll be back with you again in a little while. So see you just now, everybody. And these flowers.
Welcome back, everyone. And between a few leaves you can see a bird of prey perched in the tree.
Yeah, I'm
just spotted it. Apologies for that radio transmission that just came through quite loudly, and it's an African hawk eagle. It's a beautiful bird of prey, and I'm going to try and get us a little bit closer to it. We've just spotted it as you came across to us, so I hadn't had enough time to actually get into position, but that's fine because it's such a beautiful bird of prey, and I'm sure it's going to have a mate nearby. They form monogamous pairs and often stick together and also hunt together. So one of the few raptors that actively hunts as a pair, and it's something that I haven't seen but I've heard about, and I would love to see it. One of them will circle high in the air and another one will fly low and flush birds up into the sky, allowing the one that's elevated to fly down and catch the unsuspecting victims that are flying off from a low flying bird, thinking that flying up will help them escape, but it's actually not the case. I wonder where its partner is. It might be nearby, and Mark has told me that there has been a pair of these eagles that nest on the Djuma property. We haven't located their nest, but they do apparently nest on the property, which would be incredible if they did do it again and we did find their nest. Well, I do have an image of the bird in the book. It's the bird right in the bottom left corner here, and it often helps to just have a look in the book, especially if the birds are further away. There's another eagle called an Ayers hawk eagle which looks very similar but are very rare to see. I'm almost tempted to hang around here for a while and hope that they do perform some of their tandem hunting skills. But the problem is with birds when they start hunting is they can disappear out of sight within seconds and leave you with nothing to see. And that's why, even after having spent many years in the bush, it's one of the predators that I have seldom seen in action. We're going to continue for that very reason, and we are getting close to the area where I'm hoping we're going to find some sign or tracks of Karula, a female leopard, who was seen heading into this area this morning, and I excitedly told everyone that it was just a matter of seconds until we were going to see her, and then she veered off and changed direction. We were left sitting with nothing to see. A question through from Christina in Pennsylvania. Good afternoon, and thanks for sending through your question. Christina would like to know how many venomous snakes are there in the Sabi Sands, and have I ever had an encounter with a black mamba? And venomous snakes in the Sabi Sand. Let me run through some of the highly venomous snakes with you. There's the boomslang, which we saw just a few days ago, which is a hemotoxic snake, highly venomous. Black mamba is another one, also neurotoxic, probably the most deadly of all the snakes in this area. Puff adders, their venom is cytotoxic, so it affects your cells and your flesh, and basically your tissue will just break down, and it often results in victims having to amputate a portion of their body, so you don't want to be bitten by one of those either. Those are the three top ones. Other venomous snakes are the twig snakes, Mozambican spitting cobras. What else do we have that's kind of the highly venomous that's going to put an adult in hospital? Not too. There will be more, but I can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment. I've never had any seriously bad encounters with highly venomous snakes, and that's because I respect them, and even if and when you do need to potentially catch a snake that may be in one of your guests' rooms or in and around the lodge, if you do it properly with the right equipment, it becomes a lot safer. And also, most guides have gone through reptile handling training, snake catching courses, you could call it, where you physically have to catch snakes. They are brought in, captive snakes, but you still have to go through and perform the arts of catching them. So you do practice it, and it is something that is good to know about before you try, because it's when you're trying to catch snakes that is often the time that people get bitten. If you just leave snakes and observe them and let them be, 9 times out of 10 they're going to leave you to your own devices. In terms of black mambas, I haven't had any very hair-raising moments, but one story that comes to mind, and I've told it before but I'll say it again, is when I was tracking a leopard in the southern Sabi Sands, and my tracker and I didn't have any guests at the time, so we headed out to try and find animals to help people who were out on drive with guests. And as we were following the tracks of a leopard along a road, the road became very hard and it was difficult to see the tracks, so we looked up ahead and noticed that there was a very big black mamba, probably 3 meters in length, that had draped itself across the length of the road. And James, my tracker, picked up a small stone to throw at it just to scare it away, and the stone landed perfectly onto the black mamba, giving it a big fright. And we're on a slight gradient that was leading down to us, and the snake's fastest escape from this projectile was to slither downhill straight towards us. So we ran off into the bush laughing hysterically with one another, and probably after about 20 steps my tracker grabbed onto me and pulled me to one side and said, "Leopard," and there was the leopard we were looking for, lying on a pushed over marula tree. So that was one of my more exciting black mamba sightings that led us literally into a leopard. They are quite hardcore snakes though, and one that I do not want to spend any extra time with. Anyway, I'm going to focus on searching the stretch of road for tracks. It was this area where we were waiting this morning for Karula. She could have crossed over anywhere here in the course of the day, and while I'm concentrating on that, let's see what Mark's up to. We'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Well, quite strangely, welcome back. Quite strangely, this flower is flowering, and I'm glad I stopped by because we might have missed it. Normally, well, it has in the past flowered June, July, and I think because of the very dry conditions we've experienced with that little bit of rain, it's consistent with my flowering at home. And it was just so sad that I had a couple of things that were flowering at home that I had to leave before they opened up, and well, it's nice to see it here because I have an idea of what it'll look like if the elephants haven't taken it out. There's a lower flower that gives you more of an idea. In good conditions after a really good summer, you'll find that these flower heads are really, really huge, and the colour, the scarlet colour of the flower, or coral colour, lends to its name, known as the coral senecio. And although it belongs to the senecio family, it's actually its scientific name, its botanical name is Kleinia fulgens. Kleinia coming from the botanist who discovered it, a gentleman by the name of Klein, and fulgens, which means bright and shiny. Some interesting plants that grow along this little slope. This is a zebra wood over here. If we can just do this slowly as I move along. Little zebra wood with those light green leaves. But what's hidden amongst... Okay. Well, there's an asparagus there, but I don't think it's time for asparagus right now because I'm going to have to cling back to Scott. I'm in the riverbed, but I'm going to get out of here and I'll see you after you've found a really nice thing with Scott, because I think you're going to be surprised.
Welcome back, everyone, and this is such a pleasant surprise. Look who we found. This is one of the youngsters from the Nkuhuma Pride, and as I said earlier, I don't expect to find them moving, but lo and behold, they've surprised us. And what I want to do is, I think this is the last member of the Pride. And I'm just going to loop ahead of them. Others were moving as we got here. They're all fast asleep here. But they have moved a fair distance, I'm guessing, from where they were found this morning. We couldn't view them where they were. Hello, youngster. I'm just going to call this in on the Game Drive channel quickly. It's important that we share the sighting. Nkuhuma is lying up, cheetah cutline, firebreak, buffles with cutline.
Oh, that's great, Scott. Thanks. We on Terminalia here lost the tracks, so we'll come on to cheetah cutline, buffles with Gawi. Thank you.
Copy, no problem. Well, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, the elements of surprise. Brian, from far back down the road, he said, I could see something in the road, and we both started edging up out of our seats to try and work out what it was.
Thanks very much.
And lo and behold, it was a whole pride of lion. And after 3 days of keeping us sitting all afternoon with them, not moving, the one day we're not sitting with them in the afternoon, they get up and move. Anyway, it's a good thing, because if they didn't move this afternoon, they wouldn't be on our property.